Listen carefully to what I am about to reveal to you tonight. It has been hidden for centuries beneath layers of religion, tradition, and spiritual ignorance. These are secrets I carried when I was still involved in the occult, at a time when darkness still influenced my voice, my actions, and my practices. If you have ever woken up in the middle of the night with a feeling of pressure on your chest, a presence in your room, or a sense of unexplained intrusion, know that you are not going crazy. There is a form of deception at work in many Christian marriages. A deception that the enemy uses through something most believers consider sacred, the marital relationship. And when you understand what I am about to expose, you will never look at intimacy, spiritual authority, or your bedroom in the same way again. I remember the day I discovered what I consider to be an extremely powerful weapon in the world of darkness, a weapon taught to those who practice witchcraft, but one that the church often refuses to acknowledge. The marital relationship is not only physical, it also has a spiritual dimension. And when this space is tainted, neglected, or unprotected, it becomes a gateway for influences that can destroy the couple, peace, health, and even destiny. Back when I was involved in these practices, we didn't waste time with those who prayed little or simply went to church on Sundays. We primarily targeted believing couples, especially those with a mission, because we knew something many don't. Marriage carries the authority of a covenant, and where there is a covenant, negative forces seek to infiltrate and corrupt it. The negative spiritual world never attacks what it doesn't fear. It thrives on what poses a threat to its goals. The first deception is believing that what happens in the intimacy of the couple remains solely between the two partners. This is false, it's a trap, it's an opening. Anyone involved in these practices knows that intimacy without spiritual protection becomes a vulnerability. I've learned to identify couples with unresolved conflicts, hidden wounds, or a lack of spiritual attention. These flaws become entry points. No permission is needed to enter, an opening is all it takes. And when intimacy is marked by things like inappropriate behavior, unforgiveness, or a lack of prayer, that opening becomes even wider. This is an important truth. Deception begins when couples believe their intimacy doesn't require God's presence. They consider love separate from spiritual protection. Yet, every time a couple unites without prayer, purity, and awareness of their commitment, they open the door to unseen influences in a space that should be sacred. When these influences take hold, they can manifest as restless nights, unexplained fears, problems in intimate relationships, and disturbing dreams, or a growing distance between partners. These are not coincidences but consequences. What struck me most after leaving that environment is that many people don't connect their nighttime struggles with their married life. They pray to banish negative influences from their homes but ignore what's happening in their intimate relationship. They pray for their children but neglect the place where their family was formed. And yet, these weaknesses are exploited. Because if the relationship is weakened, so is the couple. And if the couple is weakened, it can affect everything that depends on it. Finally, there's an even more subtle level of this deception, because it can hide behind what appears to be freedom or normal behavior in the Christian life. I will never forget the mission I was given against this pastor and his wife. They were both strong, devoted, and seemed untouchable. Yet, we eventually discovered their weaknesses. They had developed a habit of watching content together. This stimulated them but at the same time made them spiritually vulnerable. They called it spicing up their marriage, but from a spiritual perspective, it constituted an opening. Every image they looked at, every scene they observed, every fantasy they indulged in became, according to this view, a kind of agreement that opened a door. This opening didn't stem from their disbelief in God or their dislike of Him, but from the fact that they had left a breach without knowing how to close it. This is where the strategy becomes more targeted. It's not about attacking beliefs, but desires and habits. It's not about questioning faith itself, but the way it was lived. The danger doesn't necessarily come from something obviously wrong, but from things that seem permissible and enjoyable. Little by little, What begins as a simple discovery can become an addiction, then a form of loss of control. What was perceived as freedom can transform into constraint. And what was once an intimate relationship can become a source of turmoil and misunderstanding. But there always comes a moment when something interrupts this process. A moment when awareness awakens, when one feels a step back, a profound questioning. And this moment came to me one particular night. I was performing a task when I felt something new, a kind of shame, not simply guilt, but a deep shame that confronted me with myself, an awareness of my actions and their consequences. At that instant, a gentle but clear inner voice called out to me and shattered my certainties. It made me understand that my actions were contributing to the destruction of what God had designed to reflect His image. At that precise moment, I saw the marital relationship differently, not as something purely physical or utilitarian, but as a space of respect, commitment, and building together, a place where two united people participate in something greater. This realization profoundly shook me, because I understood that the consequences of my actions went far beyond the couples themselves. This led me to reflect on the importance of discerning what we face, the challenge of protecting what we consider precious and respecting what we wish to preserve. In this logic, the marital relationship must be protected, nurtured, and valued with the same seriousness as other important aspects of life. There is also another level to this idea. The danger comes not only from visible actions, but also from a lack of knowledge or attention. I sometimes observed couples who didn't take the time to reflect on their relationship, who didn't establish spiritual or symbolic practices to strengthen their commitment, and who ignored certain dimensions related to their past. They thought that love alone was enough. Yet, without a certain awareness and a solid framework, love can become fragile. In reality, the challenge lies not only in what we do, but also in what we choose not to protect. True power lies in what you leave unprotected. We didn't need to push husbands to cheat, nor wives to fantasize. It was enough that they neglected the spiritual nurture of their commitment. We wanted them to see their marriage as a simple agreement, not as a form of protection. We wanted them to believe that physical fidelity was enough for spiritual security. But that's not how things work from this perspective. We observed couples carefully, studying their habits and behaviors. We identified their weaknesses. We waited for the moment when prayer diminished and frustration increased, when intimacy became routine instead of precious, when communication lost its depth. And when that moment arrived, we didn't attack in a visible or brutal way. We intervened subtly through thoughts and suggestions, feelings of dissatisfaction, comparisons, doubts, what if or why not ideas, or even the feeling of deserving better. These thoughts, sown in moments of weakness, gradually weakened the relationship from within, without it being immediately apparent. But here's a crucial point. According to this view, an external influence doesn't need permission to observe, but it does need an opening to act. And this opening appears when the relationship is unprotected, neglected, or considered unimportant. Understand this clearly: the marital relationship is not a neutral space. It is either protected and healthy, or vulnerable. There is no middle ground. I remember the moment I realized this. I saw people rejoicing in the gradual destruction of a couple they had long targeted. This couple wasn't destroyed by infidelity, but by indifference. Little by little, they lost desire for each other. They ceased communicating, stopped praying together, until they gave up trying altogether. Their separation wasn't due to another person, but to an internal deterioration they hadn't recognized. They had never learned that their relationship could be a battleground that needed protecting. This leads to one last important point: everything can change when you become aware of these realities. When I left that environment, I understood that all negative influences, whatever their nature, have no effect on a united couple who are aware of their commitment and attached to strong values. Some couples are strong not because they never encounter difficulties, but because they know how to face them together, stay united, and protect their relationship. The problem arises mainly when couples lack vigilance or awareness, But as soon as they become attentive, take care of their relationship, strengthen their commitment, and value their intimacy, everything changes. From that moment on, negative influences lose their impact, difficulties become easier to overcome, and the relationship is strengthened. Because when there is light, that is, awareness, commitment, and respect in the relationship, negative elements no longer have a hold. These influences recede. I will never forget the first couple whose marriage I couldn't achieve. I tried different approaches, but nothing worked. In trying to understand why, I discovered the reason. Every night, before going to sleep, they prayed together. They consecrated their rooms, affirmed their faith in their private moments, supported one another, and protected their relationship. Because of this, their union was as if protected and difficult to break. That day, I understood something essential. It's not just knowledge that changes things, but how one lives their convictions in practice. According to this perspective, every difficulty in a couple can be linked to an unprotected vulnerability. Tensions, misunderstandings, a cooling of the relationship, or certain negative experiences can be associated with a lack of attention or protection in married life. The proposed solution is simple: value the relationship, preserve it, and integrate a spiritual dimension into it. It's about considering this space precious and treating it with respect and seriousness. Thus, if a couple is experiencing difficulties, they are encouraged to acknowledge their mistakes, such as certain behaviors, a lack of forgiveness, or a lack of spiritual attention, and to make the necessary adjustments. They are also advised to strengthen the relationship by affirming its importance, letting go of past influences, and fully focusing on their present commitment. Praying together, supporting one another, and integrating a spiritual dimension are encouraged, with significant moments in the relationship also presented as essential. Finally, it is recommended to remain vigilant and committed because difficulties can resurface if the relationship is neglected. But as soon as a couple regains control, values their commitment, and protects their union, they become stronger in the face of trials. The message emphasizes that this awareness is not insignificant, but rather an invitation to develop greater discernment and responsibility within the relationship. It encourages couples not to see themselves as victims, but as individuals capable of taking action, protecting their relationship, and strengthening their commitment. In conclusion, a solid relationship, protected and nurtured by strong values, becomes capable of withstanding difficulties and remaining stable over time.